This is Erika Washington with Sticky Note Conversations. Look at you. You're sitting across from me.
And you used to sit across from me, too.
I did. You were my foray into the radio. You had a very cool show. What was the name of that show?
Black Power.
Black Power.
Talk Action Radio. But that was important, that I like that Talk Action Radio because there's a lot of conversation on the radio, but I want to make sure that it was something to inspire action in that approach.
When did you start doing that?
Wow. I think 208, maybe 207, somewhere in that area.
So this is our next episode of Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington, your host, Erika Washington here. And I have the pleasure of having the best sticky note conversation with one of my favorite people, Mr. Savoy. And I could say a lot of things to introduce you. I am going to let you introduce yourself and how you see yourself. But I see you as the reason that I know anything about anything when it comes to Las Vegas, Nevada. And, I can tell a little bit about that story. But the idea that so much has happened in Las Vegas and there's so much deep and rich history here that I knew nothing about before 2008 when I moved here, but then coming and having the opportunity to meet you and then work for the Las Vegas Sentinel-Voice gave me the foundation, I guess, for all of the work that has come after that. So for you, you are a friend, a mentor, a icon. You're just all of the things, but you are Ramon. But for the audience, who are you?
I'm just a little country boy from New York City, Harlem, USA. 147th Street between Amsterdam and Broadway, in case you want to Google.
I think, folks from New York, they stay from New York because you've been here how long?
Since 78.
Wow.
45. Well, going on 46 years now. Yes, time is flying and moving quick.
What brought you to Vegas? Oh, that's right.
Air Force.
Military man.
Yes. Nellis Air Force Base, 1978, end of March. So that's I'm creeping up on 46 come next month.
But what made you stay? And I ask that because coming from New York with this rich history of Black folks and Black power and just so many things happen in New York, especially in Harlem, and then to move to the desert where there are far less Black folks and a different sort of history. What made you stay here and play?
As I said, I got here in March of 78, and when I first got here, I was a refueler for aircraft. So I drove big trucks to refuel aircraft, and I did that for about 4.5, almost 5 years. And then I cross-trained to become a plumber on aircraft, which meant fixing the fuel systems on aircraft. And when I had the opportunity to cross-train, I was given the option of wherever I want to go. And I had already roots here in Las Vegas because while I was here and in the military, I worked predominantly graves and swings. If I did my whole 6 years here at Nellis Air Force Base and put in even 14 to 16 months of service, I was always in the dark. So, and one of the reasons I chose to go that route is because I had pseudofolliculitis, which means a shaving problem. And because Nellis Air Force Base is an international base where people come from all over the world, and as we know, military really means imagery. So I was not your ideal person to look at if I have a grubble face when everybody else is smooth shaven. So I had no problem doing graves and swing shifts, which allowed me to have multiple part-time jobs. So I stayed busy and met a lot of people and did a lot of things. And when the time came to decide coming out, I was already had set myself up on a couple of different things. In fact, I was at the radio station KUNV. I had a show on KUNV while I was in the military. My supervisor allowed me to leave the base because it had a good imagery of showing the military in conjunction with a radio station and good promo, and they all approved of that. So I had an opportunity to do a morning show for a while, and then I did an afternoon jazz show. Seat Williams and myself, we used to call ourselves Black Monday.
Mm-hmm. I always thought it was weird that military people had to shave. I don't know what that is actually about. I like beards.
Well, the thing is that when you shave, clean shave, everybody would look the same. Whereas if you had somebody with beard, goatees or whatever, it wouldn't be allowed. If I'm not mistaken, I think the Navy was the only one that could get away because, they're out there in the middle of nowhere. No.
No, keep you warm a little bit.
I think it was the Navy, somebody. But anyway, I don't know what the regulations is now, but I think they would get a lot more people to stay or so forth. And I believe I would have remained in the military if I had that option of saying, like, can I stay at this base? They like to move you around and so forth. So it was one of those things where I just felt like if you did that, because in fact, when some people would get orders, and you might not want to go to Japan or Okinawa or something like that, or Guam, because of, or even a base that might be closer to where you was at home, and they would not let you switch with somebody unless you were the same rank, had the same amount of time left in to fulfill that obligation. So they just tripped on a lot of things that if they were a little more open, I think they would have a lot more people, because retaining is very difficult. Having people come into the military, younger people don't want nothing to do with the military.
Well,
they take
it's a lack of
advantage
autonomy.
Well, they like to be able to. Now, I think a few people that I know that their children have joined, they go for the education. They go for that benefit of that, and not necessarily because they want to be patriots. And that's not the objective.
Yeah, it's a vocation. It's a way to move out of your circumstance. And I was telling somebody, this was a while ago, that when I was in high school, the recruiters spent a lot of time at the schools, trying to get folks to sign up and take the ASVAB or whatever. And I took the ASVAB. But I took it to get out of class because I was like, oh, sure, I'll go take a test. But I was a good test taker, and I actually got a really high score. I don't remember what my score was, but I remember I got one of the highest scores in the school, and then they would not leave me alone.
Oh,
and
see,
then
once
I realized,
once they got you in the loop, you were there.
But I realized I am not for the military. The military is not for me. They didn't want me. I didn't want them. And that is not my personality. There's nothing that would have worked out well for that. So, it took a lot of convincing to get them to leave me alone. But I feel like for the most part, a lot of times, and it's just my personal opinion about the thing, is that they spend a lot of times in these low income areas trying to garner these kids.
Not anymore. Because
they're not doing that anymore?
Because it's they want qualified people that's, before in the military, if you got in trouble or something, the judge gave you an option. So they said, like, do you want to do time behind bars, or would you like to get some bars? And, that a lot of people joined the military, got involved with the military like that. And I would also, they try to have a more quality force because of the technology of of the munitions of what they're using now, and they want to have people that can be able to learn and to get acquainted with the weaponry of today and not necessarily what was before. So that thing about them coming into and around, that's I guess in Michigan it's a lot different because you came around Louis D. Brandeis High School in Manhattan. There was no such thing as recruiters. The only recruiters were drug dealers.
Let me ask you about this first radio show that you did. What was that all about?
Well, at the time, I had already pretty much established, after acquiring in the Las Vegas Sentinel-Voice newspaper, that moving forward and expanding on trying to capture another audience of individuals because everybody, a lot of people do not read the newspaper and they want to be able to hear on the radio because in the radio you're driving or whatever. Back in the day, there was a way that more people would listen to whatever was on the radio and so forth. So it gave an opportunity for us to have guests to speak at the moment because it was a live show. It wasn't recorded, and that was one of the stipulations that I really imposed, was that it would be live and that it would be calls so that whoever was my guest and speak, other people, because I didn't feel that I had all the questions to get all the answers. So that way I would open up the phone line to make sure other people could be engaged in it. And that gave people an opportunity where in print and newspaper, people would not necessarily write. You already have a hard time for them to read, and now you ask them to write to a commentary or something of that nature, and that would be something that did not really take. It did not happen.
Give us a little bit of history on the Sentinel-Voice.
Okay, well, I'll go from me backwards and put it this way: that the Browns, the Browns were their name, but Lee Brown had. I acquired from Lee Brown, who was the family son of Betty Brown, and oh my goodness, I'm getting a Biden moment. but Mr. Brown and Betty. So Betty Brown was okay. I better go the other way to the extent I know.
Okay.
Where the Voice was already pretty much here in Las Vegas from the 50s, mm-hmm. and some of Dr. West and was one of the individuals that wanted to have something for Black people to be able to reach the Black people, because there was no Black radio stations per se or things to get out to the community. So that was the first part, and then it kind of went through a shuffle of many people. And Mr. Brown, when he came to town, he acquired the newspaper, The Voice, and then he started the Sentinel, and he bought out The Voice, which made it the Las Vegas Sentinel-Voice newspaper. And he had also a couple of fringe papers up in Pahrump and different areas. But as it came and shrunk down, and his illness and so forth, and after he passed away, his wife Betty Brown continued on with the publication, and Lee Brown took over the paper, and Bernie, the other son, was involved with the publication. And I came aboard in I think it was 90 or 91. I was in sales, and as I was in sales with another radio station, I would always kind of put on to try to help the Las Vegas Sentinel-Voice, because when my belief in advertising, not one thing works. So to have the opportunity to represent what I was representing, and then bringing on and saying this could be a fringe in your benefit for your budget, and I developed that kind of relationship I had with Mr. Brown and Betty and the family. So it just worked its way up from there, and I had it, and Lee stepped aside, and I took it over, and ever since it was what was most enjoyable and very educational to me, and my contribution to the community. And 2014, the last publication and the last radio program was just like last week in 2014. So 10 years. 10 years. It's been
10 years.
Yeah, 2014. It's 2024.
Been.
So,
mm-hmm.
And then the thing about it, Erika, is I still have some people that say, like, can you cover my event? And I'm like,
oh my God. So someone reached out. I was somewhere. I can't remember where I was. And they said, I recognize you from somewhere. Where do I know you from? I'm like, I don't know. And then she said something about the Sentinel-Voice. Yeah. She's like, I still read that.
Bang. Well, you can. You could be online.
True. Okay.
Archived. She could be archiving.
No, but she was inferring that it was still an active publication, and I was just tickled by that. And I came in to know the Sentinel around 2008 when I moved to Las Vegas. And I don't remember where I first picked it up at. But I picked up the newspaper and I'm like, oh, cool, a black newspaper. And coming from Michigan, coming from Detroit, where Detroit is 80% black, we had more than one black publication. Exactly. And so I was excited to know more. And and I've told this story, I don't know how many times, but...
You continuously bugged me, left messages.
I did continuously bug you because I think there was a phone number in the paper and I called and you didn't answer. And I had a friend named Janelle who has passed away since then, but she had a really, really good camera, like a Nikon expensive camera, and she let me borrow it. And I saw a press release or something because Jacarius Johnson, who does, he produces plays, was doing a play on the Strip that I cannot remember the name of, but the play had Vivica Fox, Brian McKnight, the girl Charmaine from The Cosby Show, and Christian Keys in it. And so I reached out to the PR and I said, I would like to do an article about this play. And she's like, okay, who are you writing for? Well, I told them the Las Vegas Sentinel-Voice. Because, fake it till you make it. She said, okay. Janelle let me borrow this camera, which I actually slept with that camera in my bed because I was so worried that one of my kids was going to get a hold of it and then I wouldn't be able to afford to pay her back if they broke this camera because they were little at the time. And so I literally slept with that camera in the bed. And so I went down and I spent the entire day down there at Planet Hollywood.
Well, did it have a long lens to it?
I think it had multiple lenses, but okay. I didn't know how to use all of these different things.
I was just trying to find out whether you slept with the short lens or the long lens.
I slept with the whole case. The whole thing was in the bed. And so I went down there to Planet Hollywood and I sat down and I spoke with Brian McKnight. I had a conversation with Vivica Fox, all of that. Took loads of pictures, whatever, what have you, and then sat down and wrote something and took these pictures. And then I still hadn't heard from you. You never answered the phone. And so I just took myself on down there. And I'm trying to remember if I borrowed a car or if I drove. I don't remember.
I think one time at that time you were dropped off.
I think I might have got dropped off. And I literally just came in.
Yep, exactly.
And I knocked on the door. And I'm just like I wrote you a story. You need to publish it and you should pay me to do that. And you looked at me like I was crazy. But then that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Like so many things that still today, having the support and having enough support that could be financially supportive of your endeavors. And that's one of the things that, even today, as I said, that, people still say, I have a story for you or something other. And then a lot of different people that were, that's found the importance of a newspaper. And they're like, when you're going to get the Sentinel back again? And I'm like, you got about 250,000 to get us off the ground. And people never realize all that it takes. And then they're like, well, can't you just go online? And I said, well, you still have to pay for things to go online. You got to pay staff. You have to pay editors. You have to pay many different things. And it's
important to pay writers. And I think there are folks who don't pay writers. And people are just like, oh, you can get exposure or X, Y, Z. Exposure doesn't pay NV Energy, nor does it put your kids through college. And I think that the craft of writing and the craft of journalism is so important. But I want to ask you your thoughts around, why couldn't we hold on to the paper? If people actually cared about it, why couldn't we hold on to a black paper in Las Vegas?
Well, you can't satisfy everyone. So if you wrote certain things, and we did write editorial content.
I made some people mad.
Exactly. Well, it's when you make them mad, you have their attention. Mm-hmm. So they did read it and so forth. But having support and getting continued support, and then others would, everybody had suggestions, and they were like, well, why don't you sell the paper? Why don't you charge for the newspaper? But that in itself was a headache. And back in the day, I would have had to buy those
The boxes
to put the papers out on the street, and then other publishers from California and so forth, and they would talk how people would knock out to get the money out the boxes, and then to try to put them in locations, because we were a free publication, so having locations to put it out free, people wouldn't mind. But when I suggested that, that would give them an added responsibility to have to collect the money and then make sure that money is off to the side and whatever. So, like your daily publication is. And that's, they don't look at it the same way. And I had distribution points in the churches, and then some of the ministers came back at me with like, the people are reading the paper while I'm trying to give them a sermon. It's just a many different aspects. And the reason why I really put it in the church is because within the LV 106, as I like to call it, the predominantly west side where a multitude of churches was, people would be coming from Henderson, North Las Vegas, Summerlin, and so forth. So this was the way for them to get that publication, because naturally some outlining areas would not let me have distribution points to put the publication in their supermarkets or in their stores and locations of that. So
I used to just take the paper places. I would just take it and drop it off. When you have a certain product and you believe in your product and you're trying to convince people the importance of your product, it just goes a long way if they read your product, or they and that was the same thing with advertising with agencies, where they had accounts. It wasn't like we had a relationship with Caesars or the MGM or Wynn or so forth, because I tried to get the papers to go into into their cafeterias where their employees would be. Yeah. Anything where there was something, where there was a location where there was a volume of people, and it would be a benefit for them to have it. And it was like, oh no, yeah. And a big thing I would have to, one of the things that really was pretty rough is I had a good relationship with Station Casinos. Over a period of time, I was doing their membership publication for them. I remember.
And then it happened that because of what was happening with the culinary wanting to become part to unionize
Station Casinos.
So, it was kind of difficult when you start putting certain things, and I was having one of my drop places was the culinary union, and they was like, your stories are not very conducive with us.
Well, and that's always something, right? So, because I've said this to folks who work, with and through the culinary and what have you, is that the Sentinel-Voice had a good relationship with Station Casinos, and they were supportive. Is one of the reasons I think the paper was still, moving along and going, is because of Station, not because of the union. The unions didn't say, hey, we will do X, Y, and Z. And so, and they didn't have to if they didn't want to, but don't tell somebody else what they can't do or where they can't get support if you're not willing to also support. Because, how are the unions in supporting the Black community in that way? So I don't know. I have a love-hate relationship with unions in general, not specifically any particular one.
Well, Las Vegas was outside of Michigan and Detroit and so forth. I think Las Vegas is like number 2 union town.
Yeah, I've belonged to unions, come from union family and what have you, and I do believe that a lot of unions helped make folks middle class that otherwise would never have been middle class, including my grandfather. He would not have had what he had if it wasn't for the UAW and having that long-term job with Chrysler and all of that. But there's still so much racism and sexism, and then there's just, there's not a lot of transferable skills when people try to go and do something else. So I'm wondering, though.
Take 5 for a second. Ed Brown.
Ed Brown. We will insert Ed Brown. Was so he was the founder
of the
Sentinel.
And he bought out.
And he bought the Voice.
Bought the Voice out.
And who was founder of the Voice?
Well, there was some shady stuff that was going on, but from the history,
I need the tea.
But read the leaves. But from what I understood, that Ed Brown had a deal with Mr. Connors from Seven Seas. Mr. Connors from Seven Seas was the person that had the voice at the time, and they negotiated some stuff. But it used to come back to me later on as like, y'all still owe me money, and I'm like, yeah, we will continue to owe it to you too.
Did you want to go into journalism?
Oh no, that was not even true.
But you want to do multiple radio shows and run a newspaper, but you didn't want to be a journalist?
Well, my radio career started back in New York City when I went to City College, New York, and we had a radio station. And I was a DJ. I worked at record stores, and so I had, inventory of music. And one of the record stores that I worked at, he had a nightclub too. So I used to be able to DJ at his nightclub. So it was I was always in tie with music. I was, from a very young age, my sister and everything was music with the 45s.
Right.
So, that was something that I had opportunity. So as I said, I would think that it was a connection when I went to City College and I found out they had a radio station. Now, this was the interesting part, because this was back in the day when cable TV was on the scene. Mm-hmm. But our shows was not visual, but the only way you could hear it was to have cable. So you had to turn on your TV in black. That was very difficult. But it was my first experience with that. And then with, as I said, a friend of mine, Cortez Simpson, who was in the military. We was in the military together, and he knew about my background and radio and so forth. So he was involved with 88.1 and KUNV. It's just one thing after another allowed me to join and get into that. And the reason, as I said, I got involved with the paper because I was at KCP and I was in sales. Mm-hmm. And opportunity from sales. I had worked at a couple of Caucasian radio stations that wanted to be soul stations, so I was viable to them to get into the community. So those things kind of worked out, and it was not my objective of getting to something or one thing or another. Just if I found something that I could have an impression to get and to make better and to do better, that's what I did. And it's been an exciting journey. Mm-hmm. I'm continuously, and I have to keep correcting people when they say, how is retirement? I'm like, what does that mean?
I'll say I don't know anything about you retiring from anything. You move more than I do, I think.
Well, when people say that to me, I say, well, you must be my shadow, because everywhere you say you see me, I see you, right?
So I had the opportunity to do a social justice panel recently in conjunction with the Super Bowl that has taken over Las Vegas this week. And as I was sitting there in the audience talking about the work that I'm currently doing at Make It Work Nevada, I saw at least 5 people in the audience that I have interviewed over the past however many years, from our current Attorney General, Aaron Ford. I think back to when he never wanted to do interviews, and I had to try to convince him that, this was going to be great to do something for the Sentinel. I think this is when he was first running for Senate.
Exactly.
And then Sandra Summers Armstrong, Assemblywoman Sandra Summers Armstrong, was also in the audience, and I had interviewed her around the F Street closing. And then Dr. Beverly Mathis was in the audience, and I had interviewed her when she retired from Booker Elementary School.
Exactly.
And there were some other folks. And it's funny because afterwards, Dr. Mathis came up to me and she said, I knew you from somewhere. I couldn't place you. And until you said, my name. And I said, yeah, I interviewed you. She's like, yes, that was so great. And, and then she invited me to come do something. And there's something about this work. Like, I love talking to people, right? And I love hearing their stories, and I loved writing, but the connection that you get with people, and you've seen them grow and change over the years, and you've helped document that, I think is probably one of the biggest privileges of writing for the paper and still having, a lot of hard copies. I have a trunk full of hard copies.
I still have two storage bins full of Sentinel-Voices.
And I know I said I think I was going to donate some to Clay T. White, so I'm saying it out loud.
Well, Clay T. White of the historical from the library, they have digitized a lot of the earlier Sentinel-Voices, and they just finished completing that. So it's up online and so forth.
People can find them online?
Exactly,
very cool. We'll have to get that information. But I know I had some, I don't know if she has the ones that I have that I told her I would also make sure folks could have if they needed them because, he had some good stuff there. And, it's a great way of documentation. But I wonder now, like, how are we documenting, what's happening? And as people are matriculating through politics and social justice world and everything else happening in Las Vegas.
How are they getting their information?
How are they getting their information in, is it only through the internet, through blogs or Instagram or TikTok or what have you? But, I think we still need a tangible like paper of some sort. I don't know how we make that happen again though.
Money, 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 money.
Some large investments. Investments.
I had this idea one time to approach professional athletes because, we get to interview them or take pictures, whatever. And, I take out, when the opportunity rises, opportunity is for me to get. And I would say, you had a couple of technical files last year that cost you a lot of money. Why don't you give us one of your technical file funds? And they look at me like I was crazy. And I'm like, you're averaging 3 technical files a year. Go down to 2 and give me one. And it's not going to me personally, but having entertainers and people in the industry to really know the value of, because I think the newer athletes are a lot more attuned to knowing the importance because there's a history of injustices that they can see now and they have a better understanding. But when you think about it, none of them own any kind of media outlet to get their voice and to reassure people of what's going on and how they can best do it.
And to control our narrative.
I mean, to have Baron Allen, I applaud him. And that's, you had John Johnson, you had BET.
Yep.
He had, and then Ebony Magazine and Jet. Yes. So but now looking at those publications now,
they're not owned by us.
Well, it's not only owned by it's cosmetics. It's based off entertainment. So you're giving your audience what they're buying, and I think we kind of talked about that in American Fiction. American Fiction. That whole idea of when the sister said, like, hey, I would like to kind of, write the righteous stuff, but that ain't gonna sell nothing.
Well, and that's the thing. And so is it that people don't want it, so this is why the media goes this way? Or is this what the media is saying and this is why folks are going that way? It's like, do we only want the gossip and the celebrity entertainment, or is that what we're being steered towards to think that's all that we want and that we're not digging any deeper into the politics of it all and how we are connected to what's happening in Gaza and how we are connected to what's happening in the UK and Brexit and all of that. Like there are ripple effects to all these things that actually do affect us, but I think it's so esoteric and hard to grasp and it's so much easier to have a conversation about, Beyonce or something. And not to say there's not anything worth talking about with Beyonce. There just may be, but there's just so much more. And, we've lost our attention spans. And one of the things that I read the other day, you're familiar with Club Shay.
Oh, yes.
Shannon Sharp. He's not a journalist by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, no, wait a minute. Let me hold that thought.
Okay.
Identify what a journalist is. When you put the titles on people and definitions, then you have to look at it in several different ways because everybody is not a writer.
True. No, it doesn't have to be a writer. I think it's more about ethics more than anything, because I wouldn't say that it's about writing, and I wouldn't even say it's about a degree, but I think it's about ethics and fact checking, but also asking the right questions and not being veered off into one way or the other. And it's not about an opinion.
Guiding somebody into something.
It's not about opinion. It's about fact. And so a lot of folks have said, I want to write and I want to do X, Y, and Z. But a lot of people over the years that I've met just really want to write opinion pieces. And that's fine. There's a place for opinion pieces, but that's also that's your opinion. You just want to talk about what you want to talk about. Cool. But if you want to interview people and you want to get to the bottom of some things and then do some follow-up interviews with other people and X, Y, and Z, and then put something together that gives people a landscape of what's happening, that's journalism to me. So that can be radio, it could be television, it could be writing, and it's also being ethical, and you're not lying about what's being said, and you're
conspiracy, just all the conspiracy theories.
Well, there could be even if you write about conspiracy theories, just be truthful about, and transparent about where this information is coming from.
Well, with that in mind, would you, not necessarily, but a listening audience of individuals, would they prefer Shay, or would they prefer King, what's that with Barkley? King Barkley with Gayle King and Charles Barkley. So you're not even familiar with their. See what they're.
No, actually,
see what you want to listen to.
I know who Gayle King is, obviously.
Now,
but
is she a journalist? Would you say she's and now Charles, just because he does sports, does that make him an authoritarian on that? And then they have guests and they just have regular conversations. So
probably. I've not seen it. Them doing that.
Maybe you won't, because I don't know how much longer it's going to be.
Right, and I'll have to go take a look, because maybe it's of some interest. There's a lot of interesting things that don't make it through or what have you. And I think Gayle King is a journalist, yes, obviously, and she can do some good interviews, I think. But for me, when I think of a good interview, and one of the reasons I want to do this show is that I like long form conversations, because these 20-second, these 20-minute conversations, I feel like it's like you ask a question and then someone sort of dig deeper, say more, like expand on it, and let's figure it out. That's the one thing that Shannon Sharpe is doing. Like, and someone made a comment in his comments saying that he's single-handedly expanding people's mental capacity or something to that nature, because the interviews are so long. Like the one he just did
2 hours. Cat Williams was 2.5.
Yeah, and Monique was 2 hours and 55 minutes. And so, people are watching stuff on TikTok that's 30 seconds and, 60 seconds, right? And that's as long as people's attention spans are becoming, including mine. Mine has gotten a lot shorter than it was, which really frustrates me. But I do like longer form things. I prefer a 10-part miniseries over a movie.
Well, I think if as they're taking shots, you take shots while you're listening, and you can.
I'm not taking shots.
You could move right along with them, and you could see. As you're taking shots, it's like, oh, I'm getting a lot of loose. I can see how this is working.
Yes, this all sounds very good to me. But no, I do. I'm not doing the cognac with them, but I appreciate that those longer conversations, and I wish there were deeper questions that were asked about some of these things, especially on the Cat Williams one. That one, I think, just kind of it took on its own life. But either way, having that opportunity and platform for Black folks to talk about things, I think is really, really important. And even though this is more celebrity angled than anything, I'm hoping maybe he has some other folks on that we can have some deeper conversations about other things.
Well, he had some other. It wasn't like Cat Williams was his first interview.
No.
So
He's had other people.
The thing would be now, these were two individuals that had issues somewhat with the industry. Mm-hmm. So now where do you go from the,
right.
how do you raise the bar?
Well, one, he needs Tyler Perry on to explain himself. I think that, because you get into the depths of how that industry works, because I think there's a lot of mystery around that, and people think it's something that it's not. And, there's a filter over celebrity over the pictures, the videos, the what have you, and we see people how they want to be seen or how their agents want them to be seen versus that they're, like regular everyday people. And you brought up the movie American Fiction because I did want to pick your brain a little bit about these movies. American Fiction and Origin.
Two of
because,
them. Excellent.
Yes. And
Song of Freedom. Cry Freedom. What's that with the pedophiles and Something of Freedom? I showed my sister it last night on Apple or Prime. Yeah, it was on Prime.
I'm gonna look
Song of Freedom.
Song of Freedom.
And that's about the pedophiles, and it's based off a true story of an agent rescuing children in foreign countries because of old Caucasian men that love the little lilies. You're not familiar with that one?
No, you should have texted me so I watched it last night.
Okay,
so
all right. But these are the kind of movies that I like. You can't really say they're true, but they have true, like Griselda. I finally
I
look
finished
at
Griselda
I've just finished Griselda yesterday. So it's these type of movies that, even though they're not factual totally and so forth and so on, but at the same time it gives you a taste of an interest. If you're interested in it, you'll find out more. But that American Fiction.
So I saw that. I go to the movies by myself. I just enjoy going to the movies by myself. And I had been wanting to see it since I had originally saw the preview sometime last year. And it felt like a really slow roll for it to even come out. And it's just like, does anybody want this movie to come out? I was really questioning why it was taking so long for it to come out. And then it finally did, and I was able to see it. And I'm like, this is brilliant. I like all of the actors in there. Sterling K. Brown is amazing. Jeffrey Wright.
But now I'm going to stop you for 1 second.
Uh-oh.
They had on their poster what they're showing about American Fiction, and it has what's her name, Diana Ross's daughter,
Tracy Ellis.
Tracy Ellis, right? Instead of having Leslie Uggams, who was a major part of this movie, they don't have her. They show all the young people.
I didn't even know she was in the movie until I watched it.
Exactly.
Yes.
And on the poster it has Miss Ross, and it's like no, it's not a super knock, but Leslie Uggams was one of your main characters, which I thought would have been nice if they would have just at least nominated her for supporting actress.
Yeah.
Because she did a wonderful job.
She did a wonderful job. I think everybody did a good job. I think Issa Rae did a good job. Erica Alexander did a good job. I even think the lady whose name I can't remember, who was their housekeeper, was a great character. And there's something about being able to watch this movie, and none of the black people were minor. They all had story. And so I think that was one of the really strong suits of the movie, is that there weren't minor characters. Even the housekeeper had a backstory, and we knew about her backstory and her love interest and all of that. And the only people we didn't really know anything about, honestly, were, I think, the white people in the movie. There was no backstory.
Well, that's what gave it a spice, because it was kind of stereotyped.
Yes, it was the opposite of the magical Negro sort of thing. But then, what did you think of the ending?
It made you think, because I was discussing it with my sister who's visiting in town, and the way that because we don't want to give anything away in case people have not seen it yet.
Well, they should see it before the Oscars, though, because it was nominated for
very much.
Best
Picture.
Best Picture. Amazing.
Right. So it made you think, because the way it started ending at the end, and I would go back to saying, when we talk about people that read and so forth and so on, Oprah tried, when she was doing her show, when she would do the book review, so people would read these books. But a lot of the books, it's not books that I would read because they were fiction, and I like to read real. And
you're not a big novel.
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. I have to get something out of it that will benefit me moving forward. And I'm not in a circle where the discussion would come where I would be talking about that particular book. But if it's a book that I could talk about that would bring much more impact with a conversation when you go to a meeting or something another, and you can relate to something that was done. Because it's, as a youngster, reading was not my forte.
I loved to read.
The Hardy Boys. My mother, I kept convincing.
Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. I remember those
I convinced my mother to continuously buy me those books, and I would read the first 10 pages, and that would be it to the next book.
And that's the thing. When I was a kid, I would devour books. And this is when I think about my attention span being so much shorter, and maybe it's, a lack of time and all of these different things. But I read Gone with the Wind when I was in.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
That whole volume.
I read Gone with the Wind and the sequel, Scarlet, in probably junior high school.
Wow.
And I would just devour books and just all day long, reading. I loved it so much. And, I still love reading. I just don't have as much time. And as I'm sitting there reading, I'll probably fall asleep, or my mind starts thinking about all these other things I have to do.
Well, you can get Audible.
I have Audible, and I actually use Audible, but I can only listen to books that are like autobiographies and memoirs. Mm-hmm. So I have, like right now, I'm listening to Barbara Streisand's book.
Oh, okay.
But that book is almost 49 hours long. 49 hours.
Well, think about how long, if you had to read it, how long it would take.
I know. I'd be reading it by the time I'm finishing it, by the time I'm Barbara's age, I think. But it's good. It's good. And I like Barbara Streisand. I'm a big fan of her and her music and her acting.
Well, I know that there are certain books that I wouldn't have purchased to read, but I do listen to them Audible. And what's the sister that worked at BET, and she discusses her that became the CEO of BET.
I don't know.
Wow.
Oh, look at, I know. Wow.
She worked.
I sort of kind of
know who I'm talking about. And then How to Get Away with Murder. What's the actress that did that?
You're talking about Viola Davis.
Viola Davis.
Oh, I did listen to her book. That was amazing too.
It gave such a backstory about her that was completely amazing. But those are not books that I would have bought. But those were books that I had heard about on TV when they did an interview for them. I said, trying to support Deborah Lee.
Deborah Lee.
Yes.
Okay. No, I have not read Deborah Lee's book from BET. She was the
and
BET
president. I much enjoy the person, but everybody cannot read their book and have it be interesting. No. But they do their own they do their own vocal on their own book, so it sounds very good. And I must say, Will Smith's book is very good.
I haven't read Will Smith's book.
I think Audible to hear Will, the way Will does his thing.
Jennifer Lewis, both her books. She's the mother of Black Hollywood from Blackish. She's the mom on Blackish.
Okay.
And then she plays Anime Bullock's mom in What's Love Got to Do with It. Her books, she reads them with such exuberance. Like, she's one to listen to. I listened to 50 Cent's book, Jeezy's book, and then there was Michelle Obama, of course.
Yes.
But I did also Finding Me by Viola Davis. Oh, I do have Will Smith downloaded, so I'll add that to my list to do sooner rather than later.
Yes, do listen to that.
Gabrielle Union's book was really good, both of them to listen to, and Trevor Noah's book, because he does all of his different accents.
Exactly.
He speaks so many different African dialects that it's an amazing book to listen to as well. So those I can listen to, and I'll listen to those while I'm getting dressed in the morning and what have you, but there's still just not enough time to read.
So you can't put the cassette in the car anymore.
I do not have a cassette player.
Well, that's unless you have Bluetooth within the car system to be able to listen at it from off of your phone. Now, somebody that I have that I buy the book. I mean, that I buy the Audible, but I wind up having to buy the book because the words that he says that I don't understand, and I can't say the words to be able to Google them to know what it means. What, Dyson?
Michael Dyson?
Yes. He comes out with some heavy vocabulary, and it's like, what did this mean? And I have to go buy the book so I can look it up to see how it spells.
Matthew Desmond, who wrote the book Evicted, which is a really good book about the housing crisis. That's also a good Audible as well. And then speaking of books, Origin, you saw Origin too, right? The movie.
Yes.
The Warmth of Other Suns, I listened to Isabel Wilkerson. That was her first book. And then the second book was Origin. And so this movie that Ava DuVernay has now done, and then I've watched Ava. I'm a big fan of Ava.
How could you not? I mean, the work that she's done,
and she and just her own personal story of being in PR and then deciding she wants to direct movies, and she didn't go to school to direct movies, and she's like, this is just what I want to do. Like, those are the kind of people that excite me, and on my wish list of people to want to interview and just be friends with, really. But
pick their brain, not really pick their brain, but just have a regular conversation.
Just have conversation.
Well, on a sidebar, real quick. That was one of the things that given the opportunity, having the newspaper and having a radio show, that I would talk, not to interview, I would just have conversation with them.
Yeah.
And I think they appreciated when we would just kind of like talk. And then I guess another thing happened because I would kind of be older than them. Mm-hmm. So they saw this fatherly figure where it's like they would like to hear my wisdom.
Wise one, tell us what you know. Please shine your wisdom on me. Yes. But that's what I wanted this to be. And I think I've accomplished it so far with most of the episodes. Some of them feel more like interviews because it's also, I think, it's uncomfortable when you put a microphone in front of certain folks and then they're just waiting and like, so what are you asking me? And so they answer that question. I'm like, let's just talk. Like, what you doing? What's going on? How do you feel about, this, that, and the third? But yeah, I think being able to have really deep conversations with people is how we get to know folks, but also how we bridge our differences, but also understand, what makes us us. And I think when you watch Origin, they really dive into what makes us us. And I think about all of the pain that Isabel Wilkerson as a person went through around the time where she's trying to unearth and understand what is racism.
Right.
And we
it's
make
not
it so
color,
easy.
And it's not about color. That's how come how come it became something of a cast. She did excellent work, and that's I highly recommend. I don't know how much longer it's going to be in the theater.
Right. Nothing stays in the theater long now.
Right. True enough. Unless it has to do with
But it wasn't nominated for anything, was it?
I don't know whether because certain dates you have to be it
still should have. I think it should have made it. I don't know. But the other interesting part about that is the financing of that movie. That I don't know if you know any of the backstory, but Ava wanted to do this movie and people didn't understand her vision and what she was trying to do. So regular studios were like, how do you make this it's not a novel. It's, this is basically, almost like a dissertation on race and caste.
Well, that's right. It's a select audience that would watch it.
Right. And so she's like, are you making a documentary? And she's like, no, I don't want to make a documentary. And so she decided to write this screenplay around the author and the author making this journey to write this book that is so powerful that she ended up going to foundations, like the same foundations that fund, some of the work that we do, like the Ford Foundation, which doesn't directly fund us, but has indirectly funded the work that Make It Work Nevada has done. But she found those people to at least start to understand her dream.
They have to buy into it. You have to talk to people to buy into it.
Or at least give her enough space to be able to dream. And that's what we all want. That's what I want, is for people to give me enough space to dream and just say, I don't know that I completely understand what you're trying to do, but here's some money. Go do it and let me see.
Well, I would say with the major distributors of movies and big corporations, for history's sake, that's how come black movies weren't produced or couldn't be seen and couldn't be people could not be aware of the talent that we have. If all of those ideas that are structured, I don't know how many film festivals you've been to watch some of these pieces, and there's some excellent minds out there.
So let me ask you this before we go. Because what you said makes me think about, I saw a video on Instagram. Joy Reid had posted a video showing the rapper Sexy Red talking about how much she liked Trump and how Trump was the reason why we had gotten stimulus checks and what have you, and people in the hood, love that free money, X, Y, and Z. And I've heard that sentiment in other spaces. And it's not true information, right? It's not actually how people got their stimulus checks. So it's not about, for Trump, against Trump. It's about this misinformation. But we have people who have actual influence over people, that someone who listens to what a Sexy Red might say is not necessarily going to go over, and they're not watching Joy-Ann's show, right? Exactly. Show, or, watching Gayle King or something like that. They may not be. So they may not get accurate information, nor are they probably going on Make It Work Nevada's website and getting information about upcoming elections and what's going on with policy and that. How do we combat that information that people are really so interested in following along to what someone says who has no authority over X, Y, and Z, but, they like their rap music and their image and what have you, or not necessarily rap, but you know what I mean? Just they hear something from somebody that they are interested in, and then that's all they hear.
That's
and
the
it stops right
there. That it just does, and it's not enough. There's not enough conversation within a family. Where I've never hear when my sons get together, they're talking policies or talking anything. It's you're talking sports, entertainment. Those are the type of things that it seems a younger generation of individuals. Entertainment is still the drug. That's all I'm going to say and it still is a very powerful drug, to which it's like when you don't have to focus on what is really happening and just focus on the me and not the we.
It makes us complacent.
And we have become, sadly, that's how come I always say I'm joyful to be the age that I am, to see the things that I saw, and knowing that I'm not in agreement with how things are going today, but that's left up to the next generation. Just keep the check coming.
And on that note, it's so great to talk to you. I appreciate you.
We got to do a part 2.
We can do a part 2, part 3, part 4.
That's right.
I think there's plenty of more conversation of things to discuss, and I would like to dive deeper into how we have robust conversations around policy. There are upcoming ballot initiatives that are going to be on the ballot in November in Nevada specifically, but also there's just national stuff happening that matters. Like, we're not a silo. And I think if we can continue having these conversations and having them with not only people, our peers, our age, but people who are older than us, but also the folks that are younger than us, is one of the reasons I started this whole series with Skylar, my daughter, is because I want to know, like, what are 20-year-olds thinking about, and I think it's important that we keep that in mind and we don't dismiss it. So again, I appreciate you.
I love you too.
I love you, and I can't wait to do it again.
I look forward to it. Have a great one, and everybody out there in Radio Land, thanks for listening in.
That's Sticky Note Conversations.
Thanks for listening to Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington. Hosted and executively produced by Erika Washington, with music, mixing, and editing by Black Gypsy LLC. Special thanks to KUNV 91.5 in Las Vegas. This show is powered by Make It Work Nevada, a project of Tides Advocacy.